bottle with liquid spilled on the floor. Doesn't seem like there's any glass around. Photos are missing. There are what look like chemical burns, probably from pine sol on her lower face, neck, and upper chest. Detectives have just stumbled onto a terrible crime scene. Mindy Morgenstern, 22, was found brutally killed in her own apartment. Her neck had been slashed, and it looks like whoever did this tried to wipe away every possible clue. One knife was still in her neck, the handle broken. Another broken knife lay nearby. The detectives are facing a difficult case. They need to figure out which of the many possible suspects could be hiding something deadly. I knew her a little, just in passing. I cut it today right along here, someone says, pointing. What kind of things have you been arrested for? Assault, battery, comes the answer. I know you've got a mark on your hand. How did that happen? I don't have an answer for you. And just when you think you have a handle on things, an unexpected turn shows who the killer really was, hiding in plain sight. He thought he'd gotten away with the perfect crime. I never thought he was capable of anything like that, someone admits. What you're about to see comes directly from public police records. For most of the footage, this is the first time it's ever been made public. It's Wednesday night, September 13, 2006, in Valley City, North Dakota. Toni Ballman and her friend, Danielle Holmstrom, are on their way to pick up Mindy Morgenstern for a night out. But Mindy's cell phone hasn't been on since the afternoon. Toni rushes up the stairs, opens Mindy's door, and flips on the lights. What she sees is horrifying. Mindy lying dead on the floor, her neck slashed, a white belt around her waist. She feels like she's living a nightmare. I was in my car when Toni came running out of Mindy's apartment building screaming, "I think Mindy's dead." She was pointing at something around her neck. A neighbor, hearing the frantic yelling, ran to the apartment and saw the body. Terrified, she immediately called 911. A cop responded quickly, but even he wasn't prepared for the scene inside. I saw her lying on her back. A knife was still in her neck, the handle broken off. Another broken knife was lying nearby. There was something else that made the scene even stranger. A strong, unmistakable smell of pine sol. A bottle was lying in the crook of Mindy Morgenstern's arm. Was it used to deface the body or to destroy evidence? At this point, it's unclear. There were no signs of forced entry and nothing had been taken. Mindy's wallet, cell phone, and purse were all lying right next to her. From what I could see, it didn't even seem like an attack in the usual sense, but the police noticed something odd about the condo. Several pictures of Mindy with friends and family were missing from frames. On the north wall, for example, there were no pictures at all, just one on the floor with no glass left in the frame. There were hints that someone may have been obsessed with Mindy, but nothing was certain. From what her friends knew, Mindy got home from college around 12:30 p.m. She missed a call from Toni almost immediately. Soon after, people in the building noticed a strong pine sol smell. Detectives were able to narrow down the time of the crime to that same afternoon. After the autopsy, it was determined that Mindy died between 12:45 and 1:30 p.m. The autopsy also revealed something that would later become one of the most important clues in the case. There appeared to be skin underneath her fingernails. Her fingernails were clipped and the scrapings were sent to the state crime lab for analysis. The tiny bits of skin found under Mindy's fingernails turned out to be a major clue. But as the investigation continued, doubts started to creep up about one of the first people on the scene, Robert Linz, the neighbor who called 911. When the police learned that Robert had done something unusual at the apartment, it raised eyebrows. He had actually gone up and touched the body. That alone made him someone worth questioning. Investigators started talking to Robert while waiting for the DNA results from under these nails. He wasn't just a helpful neighbor anymore, and when they dug into his background, they discovered he had a criminal history. With that context, everything he said now carried more weight. "Okay, let's go back to Wednesday," the detective asked. "You're at home watching TV, sitting down for dinner. Then what happened?" Robert explained. "I was on the couch watching TV. Then I heard something abnormal outside. Voices, but not normal. Not like usual, agitated, upset." He carefully told the police what he had seen and heard. He said he'd heard Mindy's friends screaming, and when he got to the apartment, one of them asked him to check on her. At first, his story seemed plausible until the officers noticed his hands. They were scratched and cut, fresh wounds that seemed too serious for someone who claimed he was just checking for a pulse. A detective pointed and asked, "You got a band-aid there?" "Yeah," Robert admitted, showing a small white bandage. But that wasn't the only thing making the police suspicious. When they asked him to give a DA sample, Robert's explanation only made things more complicated. "I didn't touch anything with my fingers," he insisted. "I knocked on the door like this, then opened it like this, and when I touched her arm, I did it like this." It was an oddly specific defense, and the level of detail only made officers question him more. Eventually, he agreed to provide swabs for DA testing. But until those results came back, the truth about Robert remained uncertain. In the meantime, police focused on Mindy's life, looking for anything that might explain why someone would target her. They started canvassing the neighborhood, interviewing friends, neighbors, and acquaintances. I was called in, one friend recalls, beginning to piece together the story of that day. They asked us if there was anyone we thought might want to hurt Mindy, or any reason someone would target her. We had nothing, no names, no theories, just confusion and shock. With so many people gathered outside, anyone could have been a suspect. But one person stood out for a very specific reason. He was another neighbor in Mindy's building. Someone one of her friends had always noticed. I remember the lights from the petrol cars flashing, people coming and going. Everyone crying, hugging, trying to understand what was happening. And in the middle of all that, this man walked by carrying a laundry basket, acting like nothing around him was out of the ordinary. Concern? Lacey mentioned him to an officer. When they looked into who he was, they learned his name, Maurice Mo Gibbs. He was 34 and lived in the apartment right above Mindy's. Mo didn't push back when detectives approached him. He agreed to talk and even came down to the station for an interview. They found out he worked as a correctional officer at the Barnes County Jail. One investigator explained, "We need to start narrowing people down. You voluntarily gave a DNA sample, and that helps us rule people out as suspects." But then the investigator found something in Mo's background that made them want to dig deeper. "You've got an honorable discharge, or was it dishonorable? What was that for?" "Assault," Mo answered. "Assault? Who did you assault?" "Somebody I shouldn't have," he said quietly. They continued asking about his past. "How long have you worked for the sheriff's department?" "Since May," Mo said. "And your position is what?" "Correctional officer." "What about before that? Ever been arrested for anything recently or earlier in your life?" He hesitated. "Assault, battery, shoplifting, things like that." "And where did all of that happen?" "California. Before I turned 18. The police then moved on to how he knew Mindy and what kind of relationship they had as neighbors. "So did you know Mindy well enough to be on a first-name basis? Did you talk often?" "No," Mo said. "We didn't talk all the time. Just in passing. You know, hey, how you doing? That kind of thing long." "Okay, but she knew your name?" "Yeah, I think so," Mo replied. "She knows my wife, they know our whole family." "Did you ever hang out? Like just go out together, spend time outside the building?" the detective asked. "No, not really," Mo replied. "We never hung out. I went to her apartment one time, maybe a week or two ago. But that was just because she was coming home. Rope. She had her pants, a laundry basket, and a book bag with her." After that, Mo told the police where he was on the afternoon of September 13th, the day Mindy was killed. "Well, I've been talking with my wife, trying to remember. I might have my days mixed up," he said. "But I know that day I left the apartment at 11:30 with her because she had to be at work at noon. We went to lunch, then I dropped her off around 12:30 or 25 and came back to apartment. I got back between 12:45 and 1. "Where'd you guys go to lunch?" the detective asked. "I don't know exactly, maybe Burger King. We do so many things it's hard to remember." "And then you went back to the apartment building?" "Yeah, okay, so what time did you get back?" I said between 12:45 and 1. Even though Mo had been cooperative and polite, detectives couldn't ignore the questions raised by his past. They didn't have anything linking him directly to the crime scene, so they let him go for now. Mindy's murder remained an open case. That meant anyone could have been hiding a terrible secret. Detectives decided to focus on the people closest to the ones she trusted and spoke to regularly. That's when her boyfriend, Jordan Rainham, showed up. Since he and Mindy had been dating for over a year, the police knew they needed to take a closer look. "Look, we want to talk about the night before and then the day of," the detective said. "Okay," Jordan replied. "The night before, that would have been the evening of the 12th, we went to Stop and Go, got something to drink, then rented a movie, Inside Man. We went home and watched it. I left at exactly 10:45. Jordan told police that he'd only spoken to Mindy once on the 13th. And that was strange in itself. Mindy usually called or texted Jordan about every little thing that happened during the day. So when she suddenly went silent, it didn't just feel odd, it scared him. He told police that he was working on the family farm when Mindy was killed, which helped confirm his whereabouts. And when the detectives asked him to provide DNA samples and take a polygraph, he didn't hesitate. He agreed to both. On the surface, it looked like he had nothing to hide. Because of his cooperation and a clean background, detectives quickly removed him from the suspect list. He wasn't a person of interest anymore, which took a key name off their radar. But while that cleared him, it didn't bring the investigation any closer to answers. As uncertainty grew, a new lead emerged. Mindy's friends mentioned that Jordan wasn't the only important person in her life. She hadn't completely moved on from her ex-boyfriend, Kyle Kurznia, and whatever was going on between them was enough for police to look closer. 3 days after Mindy's death, someone came to talk to Kyle. "Tell me how your relationship developed and what happened," the investigator asked. Kyle explained, "We dated for about 2.5, maybe 3 years. It was really hard, kind of a rocky relationship, and in my opinion her ex was always kind of in the picture. Whether they were talking on the phone or, he wasn't obsessed, but he definitely still had feelings for her after they broke up. Kyle also shared something more personal. Mindy was interested in other guys while we were together, and anytime I talked to a female friend, someone I'd known since freshman year, she would get jealous. She'd yell at me about it, and I'd just tell her to relax. We'd been together for 3.5 years. There weren't feelings involved, no reason to get upset. I was just talking about, the basketball game last night or something, Kyle explained. And I brought it up to her like, is it wrong for me to get upset if you're still talking to your ex-boyfriend compared to a friend I've had before? Obviously, he was still in the picture. I was just trying to figure it out, especially after seeing her with another girl or female in the car. The interview with Kyle paints a complicated picture, feelings of jealousy, confusion, and stress. The police knew he wasn't necessarily a suspect. But before they ended the conversation, Kyle shared something surprising. She was a very flirty young lady, Kyle said. Detectives asked, have you had any other contact with her? No, he replied. I don't remember missing any calls, but she'd sometimes get information through my dad or he'd talk to her directly. It seemed like they'd continue talking and he'd tell me things about what she was doing. I even asked my dad to stop talking to her. It was kind of weird. This new information immediately caught police attention. They couldn't understand why an older married man was in frequent contact with a college student, especially since the calls were long enough to make Kyle uncomfortable. Kyle explained, said to him, Dad, this is tearing our relationship apart. I don't want you talking to her 20 years down the road. What are you doing? Candace and I might be married with grandkids and you're still talking to my ex-girlfriend. That's weird. And it really was kind of weird. He continued, back in June or July, I told him. Either you stop talking to her or I just won't come home for 2 years. I said he could tell Mom and the siblings why, but it was a big point for me. 2 important details from Kyle's conversation stood out to investigators. First, Mindy had been interested in more than one guy while she was still with Kyle. And second, there were questions about her relationship with that older man that detectives couldn't ignore. It didn't start to look suspicious until police could connect it to something at the crime scene. Mindy's photos were gone. When detectives saw the smashed picture frames, they couldn't help but wonder, could it have been a former secret lover? Someone who was obsessed with her. Rodney Cusney, Kyle's father, became a person of interest. Detectives called him in for a friendly chat, though they were really trying to understand the strange connection he seemed to have with Mindy. You and Mindy were friends, an officer asked. She dated your son? Correct, Rodney hesitated. She was quite the bubbly character. She reminded me a lot of my wife when she was younger. If she didn't like you, something must be wrong with you. A person like that, it just doesn't make sense. Comparing Mindy to his wife at that age blurred the lines for the detectives and made them wonder just how close Rodney really was to her. For them, it started to feel like more than a casual friendship, maybe even an obsession. Then they got a key piece of information. One of the last calls Mindy received on the night she was killed was from, when detectives checked the voicemail, they weren't pleased. It made them question, was it real sadness or was it an attempt to change how people would see him afterward? Whatever the answer, the police couldn't ignore Rodney. They collected his DNA, officially making him a central part of the investigation. At this point, the case had a few strong suspects: Kyle, his father Rodney, Jay, and Mo. The detectives had to keep a close eye on all 4 while waiting for the DNA results. The web of suspicion grew denser with each passing day. Outside the investigation, people were mourning. Mindy's funeral was a deeply sad scene. Detectives quietly attended, hoping to spot something the interrogations hadn't revealed. But if the killer was there, surrounded by grieving friends and family, he blended right in. By now, the detectives had just one thing to rely on: the DNA evidence. The key to cracking this case came from one crucial fact. In her last struggle with her killer, Mindy managed to scratch them. By now, police had 4 main suspects in their sights. But just as they were figuring out what to do next, a new tip came in from a very unusual source. As investigators followed up on leads, they discovered something remarkable. One of the tips actually came from Mindy herself, weeks before her death. Brad Cruft, the district attorney, explained that 2 or 3 weeks before the murder, Mindy had called the police, saying she thought someone might be following her. What had once seemed like anxiety now looked a lot more serious. Detectives tracked down one of Mindy's coworkers, who pointed them toward a man living across the street from Roby's. He had been quietly hanging around the edges of the case, and now police were ready to learn more. When they brought him in for questioning, they asked, "Do you live anywhere besides your camper?" "No, kind of a loner then. You could say I'm a drifter." "Yeah, kind of a loner. Ever had trouble with the law?" "Nope." Ever been to Roby's Coffee or anything? Nope, never been there. Right across the street from you, the detective said. I know, been to all the other restaurants, just not that one. Why not? Don't have an answer for you. Where were you on Wednesday? Here, he said. Did you know this girl? Not at all. But detectives noticed something else. He had a fresh scratch on his arm. I see a mark on your hand. How'd that happen? Put on oil filter of a tight squeeze. The investigators explained. We've questioned a lot of people and most have been very cooperative, like you are right now. Sure, he said. I'd like to help you find whoever did this. Did you have anything to do with her death? No, I haven't killed anyone. Ever killed anyone? No, and I didn't kill her. With that, the number of suspects officially grew to 5. The main suspects in Mindy's case were now clear. The guy from across the street. Robert Linz, Kyle Kuznia, Rodney Kuznia, Mo Gibbs, and a few others. 5 days after the murder, September 18, 2006, DNA tests were done on all 5. The results brought the tension to a breaking point. When the name came back, it shocked everyone involved so much that the DNA was checked twice just to be sure. Both times, the outcome was the same. 4 of the samples came back negative. 1 was a positive match, and that match pointed to someone everyone in the community knew and trusted. Someone who had been around from the very start of the investigation. Based on the DNA taken from Mindy's fingernails, Mo Gibbs, the corrections officer from Barnes County, was the one who fit the profile. As soon as Mo returned to the station, detectives were ready. They didn't let on that his DNA had come back positive. They wanted to see how he would respond, hoping to get a confession without tipping him off. Regarding Mindy's death, the detective asked, do you intend to answer truthfully? Yes, Mo said. Teen Tweefy 2, no. During the first 33 years of your life, do you remember forcing a girl to have sex with you? No. The detective already suspected that Mu wasn't telling the whole story. To try and break him, he gave Mu a new line of questioning, designed to make him think and possibly slip up. You said you have no idea how Mindy died, other than what you heard about her throat being cut, right? No. Other than that, I wouldn't know anything, and you don't know if she was tied up or restrained in any way. I've heard she wasn't. Okay, but you don't actually know. You wouldn't know if she was suffocated with a blanket, a plastic bag, or choked. No. The detective tells Mo, I'm going to put together another set of questions. They'll be about different things that could have been used on Mindy. I'll go through each one with you. Only the person who was actually there would know the right answers. And since you say you weren't there, you shouldn't know any of this. Okay. Which of the following items was wrapped around Mindy's neck? A rope? No. A bra? No. A pair of pants? No. A pair of nails? No. A shoelace? No. A belt? No. A clothes hanger? No. Mo has no idea. He's already failed the polygraph 3 times and he still won't admit to anything. So the detectives end the test and let the results speak for themselves. Well, the examiner says, there's something here that tells me this situation is bothering you. I just want to understand why. Bothering me about what? Mo asks. For example, you said you didn't know anything about what was around her neck. But when I mentioned the belt, you reacted, and I'm trying to figure out why. I just answered truthfully. I don't know. Okay? Did you have any kind of relationship with Mindy? You were recently married, and maybe you're nervous to admit something like that, but if something was going on, we need to know. It could explain your reactions. Mo shakes his head. The detective changes direction. What do you know about DNA? Nothing, Mo says, and you agreed to let us take a swab to compare with the DNA we found. Yeah. How would you feel if I told you that your DNA matches what we recovered from Mindy's body? I'd say that wasn't true, because I know I wasn't there. DNA is very specific, the detective explains. We're talking 1 in million specific. Mo stays quiet. Somewhere during the attack, Mindy scratched the person who hurt her, and your DNA matches what we found under her fingernails. So you tell me, how did your skin get under her nails? You tell me, Mo says. I don't know anything about that. I know I wasn't. The only way it could have gotten there, the detective cuts in, is through direct contact. At this point, Mo is cornered, and what he never expected is that the DNA test didn't just connect him to Mindy's death. It also uncovered something else from his past, something the detectives now have in his file. The DNA from Mindy's case matched something even more shocking. It also matched DNA from a woman who had been assaulted in Fargo 2 years earlier. 2 years ago in Fargo, one officer asked. Yep, another confirmed. Back in 2004, during the time Mo was in Fargo, that case was never solved until now. It was Mo Gibbs. Everyone on the police team knew him, respected him as a smart, professional coworker. He had been given multiple chances to tell the truth, but he kept insisting he had nothing to do with Mindy's murder. Eventually, the police had no choice. They arrested Mo on charges of first-degree murder. Could you stand up, please, and place your hands behind your back? An officer said, we have a warrant for the murder of Mindy Morgenstern. Detective Dave later reflected on it. Honestly, I was shocked. I knew Mo personally. And yet the evidence and the DNA didn't lie. I knew he did it. Even after the arrest, the story only got worse. Investigators discovered that Mo had changed his name in 2005 from Glendale Morgan Jr., and that he'd spent 5 years in jail for his part in a drive-by shooting. As more came out, it became clear that Mo had been hiding a long history of terrible behavior. 6 women from Barnes County Prison came forward, saying he had raped them while working as a corrections officer. In total, Mo was accused of killing 1 woman and assaulting 7 others. He eventually pleaded guilty to sexual assault charges, but the murder trial for Mindy continued. At the trial, the defense argued that Mo's DNA could have ended up on Mindy's body innocently, claiming it was from when he helped her with her laundry. This was a last-ditch effort to defend himself. To support that claim, the defense brought in a DNA expert who happened once been a lab assistant on the old Quincy television show. He was their star witness. Later it came out that the so-called DNA expert was actually an actor from a crime show running a fake crime lab. Morris Mo Gibbs was found guilty of killing Mindy Morgenstern on November 11, 2007. And on November 20th he was convicted of first-degree murder. He never admitted to what he did or told the truth about that day. Mo was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and is currently being held at the North Dakota State Penitentiary in Bismarck. Mindy's murder shook her community to its core. She was young, kind, and full of promise, a person whose warmth touched everyone around her. Her life was taken far too soon, but her memory continues to inspire those who knew her to fight for justice, safety, and change. Stories like Mindy's remind us that danger can hide in plain sight, but they also show the power of courage, compassion, and community. People continue to honor her name and refuse to let it fade.